Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the INSEAD webinar on how will GenAI shape product and product management. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Before we start, a couple of a reminder of the webinar etiquette. As many of you already know, the audience is all muted. You are muted with videos off and chat is closed. However, there is a Q&A tab in your Zoom that you can use to suggest questions. To avoid replication of questions and also to prioritize questions, please vote the questions that you prefer, the already posted questions that you may prefer, so we can select the ones that have the most interest to you. Two more things: the webinar is recorded and will be published later online. And if you have any technical issues, please email digital@insead.edu. Before starting, a quick announcement. There is next week, November 22nd, live and online, a products game, which is a competition where the finalists are the business schools you see here, NUS, SSA, Oxford, Side, right, Wharton, and INSEAD. And the theme of the product games this year is how to leverage generative AI for products. So this is next week. Briefly, we'll go to the next slide. Right, I forgot to mention registrations will be on the chat. You will see the registrations in the chat. I'll just do a very brief intro, starting from the most impressive, if one may say, scientific and technological advance that happened, one of the most impressive that happened maybe in decades, arguably maybe forever in some ways, some may argue, which is the development of advanced mathematics in some ways, although it's interesting how sometimes the less advanced also work very well. In this case, it may be complex, but it's not necessarily too advanced, something interesting to note. But at least there is very interesting architectures, a lot of engineering, the deep learning architecture, the new types of architecture, which are called transformers, that came out a couple of years ago, already 5 years ago, in this famous paper that was published in Neurips in 2017, Attention is all you need. Which basically led to this new generation of AI, generative AI tools and that had capabilities that none of us really expected. Not even the experts in the field really expected this kind of capabilities so fast. Next slide. This has led to new ways to leverage and use AI, including what's called foundation models, which are, in a sense, as the word says, kind of core models that have been trained using very large data sets. One of them is, for example, GPT or Llama or BERT or the large language models or image models also. And those foundation models that we all access as a common resource for all of us, we can fine-tune and adjust for different tasks. Almost, many more tasks than you can imagine. Next slide, please. This has led to a lot of opportunities. Huge growth on the startup space. Generative AI has been probably the hottest startup investment space, definitely relative to more traditional AI the past year or so. We have applications ranging from different business processes, customer support, marketing, design of creatives, sales, but also verticals, healthcare, media, legal. So and different kind of course, infrastructure capability that everybody needs in order to leverage these technologies. All this, although it's still early, if we go to the next slide, please, are expected to have a significant impact on the global economy, and without saying much more on that, also on the way we live, maybe even the way we think, maybe even the way we exchange with each other across borders and across cultures. We'll see the effects over the years, most likely. But in terms of economic impact, according to some assessments, for example, this one is coming from McKinsey work recently, the additional economic output annually due to generative AI is estimated to be around 4 trillion. 4 trillion extra, which is roughly 4% of the global GDP. This on top of the 10 to 15 trillion from non-generative AI, the black line over here versus the blue line. And all of this is, of course, driven by a lot of applications, lots of new products internal to an enterprise and organization and external, Lots of it being about cost cutting and efficiency, of course, but lots of it is also about new products and new innovations and new business models that can be created using these technologies. We are here today in the next slide to discuss. Oh, I guess the reminder. Maybe we cannot. We don't need this. We go to the next one again. Oh, fine, sure. So we are here today with three panelists. Sudheera, who is head of product at Google Cloud AI. Karin, who is director of product management at LatticeFlow. Raphael, who is product management advisor and co-founder of Peak Product. And we'll discuss together what GenAI means for product management, but also for new products. Welcome, and we are very happy and honored to have you here. Looking forward to an interesting exchange with you and hearing your insights. Let me start with an opening question to all of you, and I'd like to also ask you if to introduce yourselves briefly when you go through this. Let's start with like your key 2 points you would like to share with the audience regarding the question about how the role of a product manager has evolved over the years as AI and GenAI has been maturing, and what have been some main driving forces behind this change. Let me start with you, Karin. Please introduce yourself briefly and share your 2 points.
Thanks for having me today. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, so I'm Karin. I'm a mathematician by trade. Worked a few years in consulting after working in research and development. And since 2015, I call myself an AI PM. So I started building services for the financial industry, intelligence services. And I've built machine learning platforms and ML and generative AI services at Google. And right now I work at LatticeFlow, which is a developer platform that helps companies around the world build trustworthy AI. Maybe I start with the last question that you had about the driving forces behind this change. And I think the biggest change that we all experienced in the last years, the last year was obviously the launch of ChatGPT for good and for bad, because it also asked a lot of us in our different roles, especially also PMs, is like, how will it actually change our day-to-day work? But also how will it change the products that we're actually building? Also because, as you already mentioned, things change at an unprecedented space. I think one of the biggest changes to the role of a PM is that now, as we've seen in the past years, specializations emerged like platform PMs, SaaS PMs, etc. And now also there is this role of an AI PM that's pretty popular. And here's my spicy take of you, pretty much that I don't think that every PM or product manager will actually turn into an AI PM. So just because you're excelling at using ChatGPT, you're not an AI PM. I think I would consider an AI PM those that actually build products where AI is at the core of the business value and the user value of the products.
Thank you, Karin. I was hoping I was already an AI PM, but I guess I'm not. So let me move to you, Sudheera. Please introduce yourself and your intro points for the audience. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sudheera, and I lead product management teams here in Google Cloud AI. I agree with most of the points that Karin made. And in addition to that, I feel that the role of product management has evolved significantly over the years as AI and GenAI has matured. In the past, product managers were primarily responsible for defining product requirements, overseeing product development, and ensuring that the product met the needs of the users. However, as AI and GenAI has become even more sophisticated, product managers now have to take on new responsibilities, and primarily, I think, in 3 different ways: managing AI and GenAI development, managing the data quality and ensuring that the quality of the data is as good as the training, the quality of the model is only as good as the data that it's trained on, and mitigating AI and the GenAI risks. These are the 3 new responsibilities that PMs now have to take on to build really good AI products. And in addition to these responsibilities, the PMs also need to have a strong understanding of the user experience, which is now getting more and more personalized, more engaging and intuitive. In addition to some of the driving factors that Karin mentioned, I also think that there are some more driving factors behind the evolution of this role, primarily increasing complexity of AI, the growing demand for GenAI, and the increasing importance of data. As the AI continues to mature, the role of product management is continuing to evolve, and we need to be even more versatile and have an even deeper understanding of the technology in order to succeed in this rapidly changing field.
Thank you, Sudheera. So lots of new things as we see, which is exciting, of course, an opportunity for everybody. Raphael, you've been in product management for many years, so I'm very curious to hear your 2 points, and thank you also for introducing yourself.
Yeah, everyone, welcome to be. I'm happy to be here. By the way, I'm an MBA 04 J, so I've lots of loyalty to the school. So super briefly, I've been at Google for a long time, about 14 years. I worked at Google Maps in the early days. Then I ran a big business, about a $20 billion business at Google called Google Shopping. But I left then Google because I'm now actually focusing on Peak Product, which is a advisory company. We're also running a conference. I'm actually just at the conference in a basement here, and we call it the Product Management Festival. And guess what? We discussed AI the whole day, and I think the meta message I want to give everyone and sort of my takeaway is this is gonna change everything. So today I've seen lots of references to it's like a change similar to maybe the web, pre-web, and then how the web, democratized content creation, all of that. And then the shift to mobile, which, was obviously huge for business models, think about apps and kind of what that changed. And it is sort of that category, right? And I have like 3 areas in my head. And I think, by the way, this area is so quickly evolving that everything I can tell you now is going to be outdated in 3 months. But I have roughly like 3 areas in my head how I think about product and AI. And the first one is actually in the product development itself. And that area is essentially, how I use or how you or a PM, a product manager, uses AI, as a tool to do a better product, right? But not necessarily shipping it. And the second one is actually shipping it, which is like having AI features in your product, right? And which is it's not the same. It's actually very, very different. And then the third one, I think that is a bit undervalued, I think. It's actually the whole life cycle, right, of a product, which I would call product support, right? And if you think about how hard it is for an end user, this could be B2B or B2C, right, to go actually back to, a manufacturer or a company and learn something about a product if something goes wrong. But if you think about AI as an all-knowing thing, or like an LLM as an all-knowing thing around the product, that could make a huge difference in the interaction with end users.
Thank you very much, Raphael, Karin, and Sudheera. We'll do a couple of deep dives, especially on the first 2 dimensions, which is about the use of GenAI for product management, and the other, the use of, the development of GenAI products. But of course, we'll touch also on the product lifecycle and also AI lifecycle, as Sudheera mentioned. Sudheera, just to step back a little bit, I mentioned briefly all the startups and all the new innovations coming out, but I didn't go in much detail. You've been sitting in Google, and I'm sure you've been seeing lots of exciting and innovative things coming out. From what you've seen, not only in Google, of course, but also around, what are some of the most promising applications of GenAI, especially in automating repetitive tasks, let's say, and enhancing team collaboration and also individuals?
Yes. Generative AI has the potential to revolutionize the way we work by automating various repetitive tasks and also enhancing team collaboration. So let me give you some of the examples and some more promising applications. So maybe start with the categories and then examples from Google, Facebook, and others. In the automating repetitive tasks category, I see 3 main areas where there is a lot of potential for startups as well as product management professionals to start innovating. First, in data entry and processing. Second, in report generation and summarization. And third, in customer service. So within data entry and processing, so I work very extensively in this area. 80% of enterprise data is still unstructured. GenAI can automate the extraction of data from documents, images, and other unstructured sources and save a ton of time and free up a lot of human labor for more complex tasks. Second, in report generation and summarization, GenAI can generate reports and summaries from very large data sets and provide executives and managers insights very quickly and easily. Third, within customer service, and I worked in this area at AWS, GenAI-powered chatbots can answer customer questions, resolve issues, and provide support and reduce the burden on customer service teams. So applications from Google include document AI and conversational AI. There's a lot of contact center applications that are revolutionizing how customer service is done across various industries. In the enhancing team collaboration category, again, let me give you 3 examples of where team collaboration can be supercharged. Code generation and review is a great category. GenAI can generate code snippets and provide feedback on code reviews and improve the efficiency of software development teams. Real-time translation is another use case. So GenAI can translate text and speech in real time and enable seamless communication between team members from different cultures and backgrounds. Meeting notes and summaries, and GenAI can take notes and generate summaries of various meetings and ensure all team members are on the same page. And finally, in terms of project management and task tracking, some of the more repetitive tasks there, GenAI can assist with project planning and scheduling and task tracking and help teams to kind of stay organized and on track. So in addition to these specific applications, GenAI can be used to improve communication and collaboration within teams by providing more personalized recommendations. The applications are just endless. So as the technology continues to develop, we can expect to see even more innovative applications that will transform the way we work.
Thank you, Sudheera. Exciting. Hopefully, GenAI will do everything but govern us. That's a different story for another day. Karin, we've seen all these possibilities, and of course, the audience collectively probably has in their minds a lot more, and so do you, 3 together. But getting there is not so easy. So, can we become a little bit kind of cautious and talk a little bit about and do a deep dive on the challenges, the pitfalls, stakeholder management and collaborations, as Sudheera said, for building GenAI products, and especially also how this is different from traditional digital products.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I see quite a lot of teams struggle who have already processes set up and are effective in like building traditional software, now moving into building AI products, because building AI products, and especially also generative AI products, differ from how you actually build traditional software products. With traditional software products, we are kind of used to that we predefine the rules that the systems are then, for example, executing. We are used to being able to prioritize and plan that well so that we know we're going to launch it that day, and this is what marketing has to do, and we understand the risks and manage these risks well. But with AI, or especially machine learning and generative AI, now the machine actually learns those rules from the data. So there is no engineer, no team anymore defining these rules. And that comes then with its own challenges. Well, first of all, it's very hard now to do estimates. How long will it actually take until these systems, for example, learn the results? So I can't really predict, for example, when my model will be ready that I can launch. So there is obviously methods on how I can circumvent it. But also because these rules are learned, there is no guarantee that the system will behave as I expect it to behave. So there is new types of errors, for example, that will come with these systems. And I need to put mechanisms in place, for example, to mitigate those, first during training, but then also when I, for example, launch these kind of products. And this is just one of the challenges that come with this. And a lot of these models, they're in principle a black box. So it's hard also to plan for what may happen in production. I can do some risk management, but there will always be things happening in production then later on that may surprise me. To go back to what you also asked, what are some of the pitfalls that the teams should be aware of? First of all, obviously, is understanding how do these products differ and how do I actually build these well? What is the process to that? But one of the biggest pitfalls that I see is that, especially with AI or now the hype of generative AI, is that a lot of teams start with the technology first. So they think about, this is cool, I want that too. Is it feasible? But actually, the best model will fail if it doesn't add value to the business or the users. So as product managers, we still need to ask the same questions that we already keep asking the last couple of years. Is it valuable? And also, is it usable? And these are really the core questions that I need to ask to make sure that the product that I'm building is actually successful in the end.
So Karin, just if for somebody in the audience who would like to get started and bring generative AI into their product, what would be like the starting point, as if you can briefly just get us moving?
To really understand what problem am I actually solving and what is the right technology that I can use to solve these problems. Like Sudheera already mentioned a couple of these use cases where AI or generative AI is especially suitable, for example, to use those. So really deep dive into what do I want to solve? Is AI the best way to solve this? And also under what conditions, for example, should I build this or do I need to build this? What do I need to optimize for? And then I can give this as an input to my team and help figure out how to do it, conducting user research and also then collaborating with the engineers to actually build the models behind it, or figure out like what services do I need to buy in order to build the products that I want to build. But core to all of this is, and this is also what I keep seeing, even though, for example, like ChatGPT is so hype and there's so many tools out there, a lot of people actually don't use these tools. So the first step also to understand what can I use it for and what is it capable of is also to try out these services myself and experiment with them and understand what is it even capable of today.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So the question of what to do is the most difficult one sometimes, both in terms of choosing and prioritization, and in terms of actually thinking about what's possible. The skill of the art of understanding what is possible is one of the most challenging skills with new technologies, GenAI included. Thank you very much, Karin. So, Raphael, let me loop you in and take a look a little bit at something that everybody's worried about. I also see some questions about jobs and what's the role of the human in this process. Are we losing everything? Are the robots taking over the world? Maybe you can help us a little bit understand the balance between human intuition and AI-generated insight in product development, and what's the role of each of the two in this process?
Yeah.
And some pitfalls.
And I think Karin made a very important point, right? I mean, it used to be that a PM would figure out something. There's a great phrase, maybe some of you have heard, it's called job to be done, right? Like you start, I think a PM, disciplined PM wouldn't run behind a technology, but would actually run behind a problem. That's a very important lesson in product management, you know, fall in love with the problem and not fall in love with the solution. And before AI, you know, the kind of computer science or engineering or product management was a lot about, you know, understanding that job. And then, like Karin said, hand it over to an engineering team that would build it, right? The interesting thing now, and this is to your point, Theos, about, you know, humans versus machines in a way, this is getting more blurry, right? This is getting more blurry, one, because like Karin said, it's not obvious what technology can do, and you know what even for engineers, just to be clear for everyone, it is a somewhat of a black box, right? I mean, Sam Altman, the ChatGPT founder, said they didn't expect it to be that good, right? And we had talks from Google here today that, you know, said the same thing. There's a bit of a magic in this, and this is very different from before. So that's one difference, the technology side. But the other thing is also creativity, right? It used to be that the humans are creative, and then again, the machines and the engineering would just build it, right? And then sort of it's a causal relationship, right? And just today, to maybe bring one experience from this conference today, we had a demo of a prototyping tool where a non-technical person could try out the development of a new sunscreen product. And it's actually, I think, a Google demo, so Sudheera might know this. But actually, it was sort of for a marketing person that could say, you know, what are the open spaces in the sunscreen market, like in this demographics or in this country, right? That brand, and what are the features that people don't like about sunscreen? It's sticky, or it's too bright or too white, right? And actually, it was a flow that generated a new sunscreen for you. And I mean, I'm not a sunscreen expert, but it sounded pretty convincing in the end that there might be a market for that, right? So I'm just making this point to say, this is a creative process. This is something where normally you do market research and you go out and you interviews, and then at the end of thing, you build it, right? Now, suddenly, you have all the knowledge on the internet that actually feeds already in your prototyping, right? So are we doomed? Are we lost? Are all the creative jobs going to be killed? Of course not, right? Of course, the world is not going to change like that. But I guess we will see some augmentation, right? We will see humans using tools. We will see tools making humans, you know, more powerful, more creative, more direct, you know. And that's normal, right? So I'm not overly worried about that, but I do think it's somewhat of a step change, right? One thing I want to say about pitfalls or maybe risks. I mean, there's obviously a lot of risks in this field, and we could spend the whole webinar generally about risks. But one thing I want to tell everybody who is maybe also not super technical: these things are really not reliable right now. And maybe you've seen this when you use ChatGPT, right? But this goes way beyond that. All of those tools, all those even machine learning tools, they're essentially learning something, and then they try to find patterns and then predict, a next thing. And then often it's very impressive, but often it's completely wrong, right? And some of you maybe know this, like, for example, something like false positives, false negatives that maybe you've learned before, like something isn't detected or is falsely detected, but it's that like times 100, times 1,000, because you don't even know why the system is telling you this, right? So I think we will see a huge effort in the next couple of years, like with tools, with data, with companies, to try to actually, and Google, right, is probably a lot betting on being reliable and better and more plannable, right? But I guess it's going to be a huge feedback loop in this market to really say, okay, yes, I got this answer now, but is it the right answer, right? So if I summarize everything here, we're early. It's very impressive. This is a big thing, but there's going to be a lot of work in the details needed, and you're going to probably benefit for now, but you're also going to have limits if you use those tools.
Thanks, Raphael. You make me think a couple of things. First of all, question mark, is creativity the last frontier? It used to be like chess, and then became Go, then became AlphaFold, then became driverless cars, then it became something else, language and poetry. And now we're wondering, is creativity the last frontier? Something to reflect. Second point is, I'm happy that, I don't know who said this, Hamilton or whoever said this, we didn't expect it to be so good. It was not, we didn't expect it to be so bad. So let's find out what the answer will be going forward, going back to your last point of the risks. And finally, a last thought. I'm wondering, a question mark to reflect. Is it easier? Almost feels like a poll question for the audience. Is it easier to debug AI or to debug a human? Reflect. Let's move to a second part, which is a lot about not only about developing GenAI products, but also how to leverage GenAI in product management. Sudheera, let me come back to you. So, what potential does GenAI hold for product management?
A lot. Generative AI has the potential to revolutionize product management, the process of product management, by providing a powerful new set of tools for understanding users, generating ideas, and developing products. So let me give you some specific ways in which GenAI can be used to enhance product management. Firstly, to understand the users, GenAI can be used to analyze customer feedback, social media data, and other sources of user data to gain a deeper understanding of user needs, their preferences, and their pain points. And that information can then be used to inform product roadmaps, prioritize specific features, and develop more user-centric products. In terms of generating ideas, so this is going back to what Raphael mentioned about the sunscreen example. GenAI can be used to generate new product ideas and explore new market opportunities. The market research that would have taken months or days for us to do, you could brainstorm creative solutions to the product challenges and then use GenAI as a tool in your idea generation process. And this can help product managers to break out of their own biases and come up with fresh ideas that might not have been possible otherwise. Thirdly, in the developing product area, so GenAI can be used to automate some of the repetitive tasks in product management, such as data entry, report generation, documentation, PRD generation even, and this can free up some time for product managers to focus on the more strategic aspects of product development, such as ideation, design, and prototyping. Now, to enhance the overall product as well, so there are personalized user experiences that GenAI can be used by tailoring product recommendations, content suggestions, and other features that are very, very catered to each individual user. So this can help improve the overall user engagement and satisfaction. So in essence, GenAI has the potential to transform the way product managers work and to create new and innovative products that meet the needs of various users. And as the AI continues to develop, we can expect to see even more ways in which it can be used to enhance product management and improve the overall user experience.
Thanks, Sudheera. Maybe I'll come back to you, Raphael, and then get back to you, Karin, afterwards. Again, you've been given your product management experience, and building on what Sudheera just said, maybe you can remind the audience of some principles for building product management teams in general. And then, Karin, I'll come back to you, and maybe you give us your thoughts about how to set up the team for success when building GenAI products, and how this plays around with the culture of the company and what kind of failures come. So I'll go a little bit to the team side. So starting with you, Raphael, a more general theme, and then go back to Karin on the GenAI theme.
Yeah, happy to. It's a large field. I would say maybe a quick word about the role, actually, because many of you might not be product managers, or you might be interested, but you might
That's
know what
good.
it is.
Sorry,
Right?
I interrupt you, Raphael. That's great, because I suspect the majority of the people in the audience are not product managers.
Won't be product managers, exactly.
What am I doing as a product manager?
What is it actually? What is this thing?
Yes,
exactly.
What is this?
So there's many definitions or ways to describe it, but I would say a good one is make shit happen in the company, right? Like bring it together, but then make shit happen in a way that actually you produce something delightful for users, right? And what this means is, many companies are run by a business plan because it's in the interest of the company. You have budgets and all of that, right? But these days, most companies win because they have really good products, right? If you look at your own products that you really love, I don't want to name now specific categories, but you all know a product you love, right? I bet you that was developed by somebody, that had that in mind, right? And it starts with this saying, what is this thing we're building, right? Building the right product, right? And it sounds trivial, but it's not, right? And it's much more than an idea. It's essentially looking at options, looking at ideas, and with a process and with a creativity and with feedback loops, like honing down something that with a high percentage will work in the market, right? You're not making a random bet and you're not spending $1 million here or there. You're actually saying, you know what? This is working because, right? And this because is work. This is hard work, it's systemic work. It's called product discovery, right? And then the second thing is actually making stuff happen, right? So there's a lot of cross-functional stuff, often, work with engineering, with marketing, with leaders, and sort of build this thing internally so that it actually can succeed, right? And then building teams beyond that is often just scaling that function, right? Proving the value of this, again, half creative and half structured work, right? And the pattern we're seeing, and I'm seeing, is that more and more companies say, you know what? Yes, I want to be a bit more like Tesla. I want to be a bit more like Apple. And then they're realizing this is not just an abstract wish. Actually, I have to and I can do something to become more like them. And I think the answer is that role to some extent, because that role really is the one that looks outside, understands users, and knows what good looks like, and then brings it internally and then orchestrates everything around that. What it is not, by the way, is it's not a powerful position. And I should say that, right? It's much more about influence. It's about creativity. It's about showing what could be and then getting buy-in, often from people that are more powerful than you. So you're influencing and then showing and proving that is successful, right? I think I'll stop here, because if I now go too much into teams, it maybe gets too much. Yeah.
I love your last point. Just a couple of comments. I've been teaching about AI and business at INSEAD for many years now, and over the time, one of the questions comes up is, what do I do after my MBA if I get trained in AI kind of skills? And one of the answers is, well, product managers is the one thing that the world needs, especially product managers who understand these tools and what they can do, right? So definitely important. We're also starting now next week a new MBA elective, building generative AI products and businesses, which has quite a lot of demand, it seems. Karin, how about the teams? Going back to the teams, anything to add about the teams for setting up for success, a team for success to build Gen AI products?
Yes, there's actually 3 points that I want to share. One is around the actual team that builds the AI products. So which roles actually do I need? And quite often when we think about AI products, AI meaning technology, I hire a bunch of really smart machine learning engineers and they will solve my problems. but there's actually many roles that add value along the AI lifecycle. And just think about user researchers, or quite often also something that's done by product managers. How can I successfully do product discovery and product validation in that space? And there are certain methods, for example, that the team should know and upskill themselves in order to do that well. So in one of the teams, for example, at Google, where we built a generative AI product for language learning, we used a technology called, a method called Wizard of Oz, method, where we actually pretend to be an AI. So the user would get a technical interface, but behind that, it's not a machine learning system, but a human that actually kind of operates the chatbot. And with that, you can test many things, even wrong answers, for example. Like Raphael also mentioned that like these systems will always make mistakes. So I can also test how users would react to mistakes, for example. What feedback mechanisms want I have in my product? And then the other 2 points that I want to make all actually arise around that. Because AI will make mistakes, what I want to have is actually a team and a company culture that provides a psychologically safe environment, so that if team members feel there's something wrong with my model, and there is core things that may put a certain group of users at a disadvantage, that they're actually not afraid to speak up in order to protect the company. And this is not the case in some companies, and I would need to proactively work in creating such a culture that people don't are fearful of speaking up, and that I have a failure culture around that. And the last point is, one thing that I can do, the easiest one to get started in order to generate an environment where people build the right products for AI, is also building a diverse team. Like there's a bias risk in all the steps along the AI lifecycle. But if I bring a diverse team from the start, then I already ensure that a lot of viewpoints are taken into consideration and experiences are being taken into consideration to build the right product and build it right.
Thank you very much, Karin. Lots in here. Sudheera, I'll come back. You mentioned a number of things regarding especially the discovery stage, the phase of the product management, the definition and planning, and all the risk management. I'd like to go back to this, and maybe you can share some examples of how to do this, or example tools, or anything you think that's useful for the audience to improve the way they manage products with the help of GenAI today.
Sure. Especially in the discovery phase, GenAI can play a powerful role in helping product managers effectively analyze user feedback, analyze market trends. And here are some specific ways in which GenAI can be used. Firstly, in analyzing user feedback, as I mentioned earlier, GenAI can be used to analyze vast amounts of unstructured user feedback, such as social media comments, customer reviews, and support tickets. And this can help product managers identify any themes and patterns and pain points that may not be readily apparent from a manual review. For example, GenAI can be used to identify the most frequently mentioned features and bugs and usability issues in user reviews. Next, in identifying market trends, GenAI can be used to analyze market data such as sales figures and web traffic and social media trends. And this can help PMs identify some emerging trends and market opportunities and competitive threats. For example, GenAI can be used to identify product categories that are growing in popularity, which features are most in demand, and which competitors are gaining market share. Finally, in generating insights, GenAI can be used to generate insights from user feedback and market data, right? So these insights can help product managers to make more informed decisions. For example, GenAI can be used to identify which user segments are most valuable, which product features have the highest impact on customer satisfaction, and what are the market trends that are most likely to affect the company's future growth. Specifically, here are some examples of how GenAI has been successfully applied in the discovery phase of product management. Netflix uses AI to analyze various user habits and preferences, right? And this data can now be used to recommend new content to users, and this has helped increase their engagement and in reducing churn. A company like Amazon can use GenAI to analyze product reviews and customer feedback, and this data can be used to identify some product defects and improve the product quality and develop more new products. Another example from the music industry is Spotify. Spotify can use AI to analyze music listening habits and preferences, and this data can be used to create more personalized playlists for users, increase satisfaction, and reduce churn. So overall, GenAI is a powerful tool that can help product managers make better decisions during the discovery phase. And by analyzing the feedback and market trends, GenAI can help product managers identify new opportunities and develop products that meet the needs of users more seamlessly.
Thanks, Durant. It's interesting to hear this, your take on this, because in each of those spaces you touched, one can almost see a bunch of startups who are developing tools to support that stage. If you go back to the startup stage, which is very interesting. I have two more questions because I also see the audience has a lot of questions. Let's go briefly through them, although they are very important, and they relate a little bit with what the audience, the questions from the audience is. Karin, I'll come back to you. We've been hearing about foundation models, about the new operating model being, of the GPT being like the operating system of all the AI products going forward. How OpenAI is killing, in quotes, some of the startups because they develop their own applications. At some point, the question becomes, should I buy those things? Should I build those things? Should I partner? What are some trade-offs? What are some challenges? The buy versus build and the AI as a service kind of model. Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
I think especially with the more traditional AI products, the buy versus build is a more crucial debate, because I could still have enough data to build these models myself and have the power and the knowledge in-house to do it. With generative AI, I think it's much more likely that I actually buy AI as a service, so to say, and use external services to power my products. At some point, I may want to fine-tune them to my use cases, but there's a few things now that there's multiple models or foundation models on the market that I could use, that I look closely into, like, which of these actually are the most suitable for my use case. Is the quality of these good enough for my use case? So I should, for example, like run some tests with my use case and my test data to see, like, does it perform well enough for what I need it to? And the other aspect to it is because all those companies, they're actively developing and improving their services. And you may have heard, for example, that the new GPT version isn't as powerful as the previous one for certain problems. So one core aspect is, if you actually use these foundation models for something that is core to your product, you want to make sure that you monitor actually the quality of these services that you're using, so that if they change something, that you can react quickly to it and there is no degradation for your users and no risk to your business, for example.
Thanks very much. Very interesting. So basically, you outsource the brain, and the brain starts getting old and slow, and then you're wondering what's happening to your business.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you better monitor that. Thanks very much. I'm going to go to the last question, which also relates to some of the questions from the audience. The questions along the lines: what jobs would be lost? Are there risks with privacy? Any other risks? I mean, the jobs part, of course, everybody talks about, but maybe we can briefly leave it on the side, as this is a broader question. Let's focus on the risks in general: privacy, trust, user trust, which has also reputation risks for the companies developing these products. Can we go around the table, or maybe start from Sudheera and Raphael, or to go around the table on the risks for using GenAI or for GenAI products also?
Sure, I can start. So as AI becomes more deeply integrated into product management, there are several new risks and ethical considerations that come into play, including data privacy, user trust, transparency, and explainability. So one of the biggest concerns with integrating AI into product management is the potential for data privacy violations. So AI algorithms often rely on a large amount of data to train and operate, and this data may contain some sensitive personal information. And if this data is not properly secured, it could be accessed by unauthorized individuals, leading to identity theft, fraud, and other harm. And another major concern is the potential for AI to erode user trust. So if users believe that their data is not being protected and that their AI is being used to manipulate them, they're less likely to use the products that incorporate AI. So this could damage the reputation of companies and make it difficult to build and maintain a loyal customer base.
There's a question, before you go, Raphael, there's a question from the audience regarding, if you utilize generative AI in your product, would you market it that way? What would be your considerations? My understanding is that when regulations kick in, you may be obliged to, for transparency, to indicate that there is AI there, especially when they're interacting with people and they have consequences. But in general, how much you market it is a question mark, given also the risks you mentioned, the benefits. What's your take on this? If you have a gut feel about how strongly you would market that there is Gen AI inside the product, would you? What's your sense? Maybe Raphael, what do you feel?
Yeah, I can take this one and then maybe the next one. So, or let me actually, I want to answer super high level and super high level, but provocative. And my provocative thing is, many folks here might be in Europe. I'm in Europe. Europe is really good about being concerned about a lot of things and being intimidated and worry about a lot of things and letting that go in the way, maybe feel even good about those, being concerned and then not doing stuff, right? And I don't want to belittle the risks in this, but I think my most important call to action is you cannot avoid working on this or like getting your fingers dirty, and you might learn a lot. And actually my call to action would be use this, right? Explore it, and don't use a data privacy or risk excuse to not start working on this today, right? Because if you don't disrupt yourself, you might well be disrupted in a year by somebody else who's looking at your market, right? So that's my most important thing, right? It's a bit Wild West, right? Without now going into, we could again do a whole webinar about risk specifics and privacy, and there's even IP questions, right? And who's learning from what, and open web and news, and the stack and who owns which. I don't want to even go into the details, right? This is the Wild West, and I was at Google, for example, when the mobile wave hit, and I can say speed matters, courage matters. Don't be complacent, and the regulatory parts will get sorted out. There's smart people, meeting, discussing this. For my taste, even discussing this too early, and I would actually focus on the innovation part before I get worried too much about, what could go wrong. And this is a general call to action for Europe to not be slowed down by concerns.
You are an American European, it sounds like. The good news is that Europe cannot do even regulation. So currently it's behind the US and China on that, which is very interesting because it was supposed to be ahead. And we saw the executive order from Biden, and then China has quite a lot of regulations on generative AI and deepfake specifically, for reasons that I guess people can guess also and think about. So let's see how this plays. And just from my side, because I'm working on the regulation, I just want to remind everybody that there is no such thing as perfect regulation. It's also a product. So products about iterations. You have to start somewhere and improve, but of course you have to balance innovation and risk management, obviously. And you have to focus on risk-adjusted value creation, the financial concept of risk-adjusted returns, if one may say. Going through the questions, so there was another question which again touched a little bit the risk around. Sorry, Karin, I didn't come to you, but let me just also focus the question, which talks about. So I'm trying to do it here. Okay, specifically about how these LLM models, or I guess generally generative AI or AI, if you like, respect the data privacy for the companies, the users, and what could be some solutions regarding this. But also you can give us your take on the risks more broadly.
Maybe I'll take the first question first. I think it is very important if you buy AI as a service to look into like the data privacy notes. Like there are certain ways how you can actually use some of these models that respect the privacy of your own data as a company. Like you could use an open source model and run it locally, for example, or you purchase a version that is just at higher cost, but higher privacy and security for your company as well. But I think it also involves training of your staff of what is okay to be shared on these tools, for example, and what is not okay to be shared. I think both play an important role there. And the second question you had around risks, I also try to be more of a realist there. And I also think that some of the risks that these systems have, obviously it depends heavily on the use case. If I want to use LLMs like for the health domain, obviously I need to be much more cautious as, for example, using it in the entertainment industry. But I also want to bring up that some of the risks and some of the failures that these systems have, like hallucinations, they can also be used for its advantage. Like hallucinations can spark creativity, for example. So I could also leverage and look into like, how can I actually leverage that in order to bring value to my users? And second, The other thing that I think is important, and you brought that up when you asked about should the users know that this is an AI system or not. I think we users tend to always build a mental model of what the limitations and capabilities of a given system are. And I think we can help users to guide them to build a better mental model and not just let them loose on it. And this is our goal or our ask as product leaders, that we actually help build the system so that the users understand where the limits are.
I very much like this point, Karin. Thanks so much, because it's part of the responsibility of what you do in many ways, right? So it's also a continuous education in some ways, because the market drives the product, and the product drives the market, and vice the user cycle. There's a question from the audience that says, and then you can pick it up now. Can you talk about the costs involved in taking GenAI products to market? Maybe also relative to other products, cost, time, any of those things. Whoever would like to start. Maybe I should assign somebody. So, Sudheera, you want to start from how the costs compare?
Yes, at least at some layer, building foundation models can be an expensive affair. But some of the biggest opportunities come in the customization layer. So there is fantastic foundation models out there from almost all the major tech companies. So the cost of customizing any of these models for specific industry use cases can be quite minimal. And that presents a fantastic opportunity for companies across financial services and healthcare or any B2C use cases to just start building, and within a matter of days. And these processes used to be prohibitively very long in the past with AI models that were mostly built on supervised learning techniques. You spent 3 months gathering data. You spent 6 months building data, and building any AI that could be deployed in production took almost a year, a realistic kind of time frame for deploying an AI system. But that has been shrunk to a matter of days or weeks, thanks to generative AI. So if we're trying to play in the more foundational layer, yes, it can be prohibitively expensive to acquire the hardware and then train large language models. But then if we're playing in a layer above that, the development process can be super fast.
Somebody else would like to add to this? No, you're okay. There are some, let's see, I'm going through the questions again. There is, I'm curious, just because everybody seems to be the most voted question here. Well, actually, no, maybe I have the order wrong. Well, let's see it on top of my list at least. And what's your take about the jobs? We talked about the team structure. We talked about how different tasks during the product management lifecycle change. And it's important to differentiate between tasks and jobs. So some tasks can be changed, can be automated, can be replaced, but the jobs don't have to be. The jobs will be transformed. But if you were to guess or to think about jobs that GenAI can fully replace, or tasks it can potentially fully replace in the product management space, what would be your guesses? And again, it's a bit of a guess now because we're early in this game. Raphael, you want to give it a shot?
I can start, and then please others jump in. So I don't think we're in a replacement discussion, right? I mean, this is a tool. This is about augmenting. I really think mostly about augmenting people. And by the way, with augmenting, just to be clear, what I mean is like you still do your job, but the technology helps you to do the job better, right? I mean, that has been the pattern for a very, very long time. With technology, right? I mean, the history books are full of concerns about technology increasing unemployment, making people jobless, and it has never happened. The big question is AI different? And I think the default answer should be no, because that has been the rule. But there's still a valid question, right? Whether is it different this time? But I haven't seen the proof, right? One interesting comment, by the way, because I mentioned creativity versus execution. One thing I would have not thought that would come so quickly, if you look at those tools, is that some of the engineering parts can actually be done by machines themselves, right? Like, I mean, I used to be the PM who is creative and think about, again, jobs to be done and customers. And then the engineer would take a long time, right? And I had to wait forever, right, for the thing to see the light, right? Now, and I'm sure some of you have played with some of those tools, right? They can build you an app or a mock, right? They can test it like almost in real time. They can code, right? So, but still, I want to say, generally speaking, I don't think at all. I mean, the world needs more problem solving. The world needs more creativity. Humanity needs more technology, right? And not degrowth. We need growth of creativity, right? And of energy. So I don't think this is a zero-sum game with anything, right? And to some extent, it's even helpful that it's a bit coming after white collar jobs, right? This is new, right? It used to replace blue collar. I think now some uncomfort for white collar, but then it will move to places where actually it's value created, right? If marketing slogan creation or LinkedIn post generation is moving to machines, maybe that's a good thing, right? So, yeah.
So thank you, Raphael. So I have last question from the audience about startups and entrepreneurs. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I'd like to for a startup, and I'm not a product manager, but I want to use these technologies. Maybe you can suggest me where to start or what comments to look into, or how can I get help on how to leverage these technologies, even though I'm kind of a beginner on this. Any suggestions?
Yeah.
Practical question.
I would love Karin to answer in detail, but I want to say one thing that Karin already said. I just want to say it was for me one of the most important things in the session, which is AI is not going to solve your customer problem. AI is a tool if you know which problem to solve. I think that is the core of product management, right? So, but Karin, please.
The question is, where do I start? I'm kind of a new,
and that's for Karin, I think, to maybe to jump in.
Any feedback on this?
I guess it then also depends to look into, like, where am I in my startup journey and where is the biggest hurdles that I have. So for example, in my current team, we actually now look into how can I use GenAI, for example, to speed up our sales cycles. Our engineering team is using GenAI to prototype faster. So giving the team the means and the access to these tools to play around and see how they can benefit them is, I think, already a very good and important step to that. And then for like each individually, personally, it depends obviously on like what is the bulk of our tasks. Like if I look at a typical PM calendar, like our calendars are full of like 10 hours of like 30-minute meeting slots. If I can find an AI tool that makes me more effective, I'm happily leveraging that to make me more effective in my role, for example. So I wouldn't see it as a threat. I see it as something that can actually help me to make my things get done faster and not overwhelmed.
I would double down on this because you have to embrace the technology. Otherwise, somebody else will embrace it for you anyway. We have 2 more minutes. I'd like to close with a closing question for the 3 of you to leave the audience with one key message on the following question. What's your advice to aspiring and existing product managers on integrating generative AI into their workflows or into their products? Let's go around the table. Sudheera, can I start with you?
Sure. I think the key message from my end would be product managers who are able to effectively leverage and embrace GenAI, as you said, they'll be well positioned to lead the development of successful products in the year to come. How do we do that right now? Be prepared to experiment and iterate. This is a rapidly evolving technology. So as these tools become available, be prepared to experiment and iterate on your GenAI-powered product and processes.
Thanks very much. A little bit like what you said also, Karin. It's all about experimentation, learning, and iteration, and this speeds up this. Yesterday, there was some news about a robot that found a way to generate oxygen from some rocks from a meteorite, right? So it's exactly the same idea. Karin, your closing advice?
I think when we talk about becoming an AI PM, a lot of people think now I need to learn how to code. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. I'm actually saying like being able to speak the language of the engineers and using some low-code tools is very good. I think it is important to look at the right courses to take. So you really don't need to learn how to use TensorFlow or so, but like learning the language and embracing the tools and playing around with them and building early prototypes yourself help a lot. Like ChatGPT now launched a way on how you can train your own GPT, for example. So like playing around with these things is definitely a very good starting point, and losing the fear of doing that just because of the risks isn't helping you with innovation, I think.
Thank you, Karin. Dive and embrace it and play with it. Raphael, last 30 seconds, if you don't mind.
Yeah, mine is very similar. You know, I remember actually I'm that old that I remember the internet, 90, late 90s phase. And then I was in the middle of the mobile thing at Google. These things take time, right? You might think you're late if you don't understand what's going on right now. But these things typically this is a decade thing, right? To see how this all plays out. So you're not too late. We're actually super early. I would say we're at 1% of this. And my practical advice, similar to what others said, is like, get your fingers dirty, play around with it. There's amazing newsletters out there. There's amazing YouTube content. I mean, that's the big difference to 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago, you had to be an expert and read boring books. I think now everything you need to know, there's more than you need to know, is out there. And it's essentially be curious, experiment, and stay on top of things. You're not too late. You're actually part of the early crowd if you do this these days.
Very optimistic. There are also amazing courses at INSEAD for you, and there is also amazing webinars going forward. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And as we said, the recording will be public in a few days. Have a good evening. Thank you, Karin. Thank you, Sudheera, and thank you, Raphael.
Thank you.
Bye.